Out at the base of your tomato plant, an ant is herding aphids, not eating them, but herding them, stroking their backs to milk a sugary fluid, fighting off the ladybugs that come to feed, and carrying the youngest aphids to fresh leaves, the way a rancher moves cattle to greener pasture. This is the hidden economy of your garden, and it is the reason that almost every can of aphid spray you have ever bought has failed you. There is a $2 powder sitting on the shelf of your hardware store right now that breaks this economy at the root. 1 teaspoon in a cup of sugar water, and the entire operation collapses inside a week. The powder hiding in plain sight is boric acid. A small jar costs around $2 at most hardware stores. It has been registered in the United States as an insecticide since 1948, and in the 78 years since, no insect species has been confirmed to develop full biological resistance to it. Not one. That alone makes boric acid almost unique in the history of pest control. Most synthetic pesticides have a useful working life measured in decades before insects evolve around them. Take pyrethroids, the most common backyard insecticide on store shelves today. Field-collected German cockroach strains studied at the University of Florida by Wu and Apple in 2017 showed resistance ratios of 30 to 50 times the laboratory baseline dose. The chemicals stop working, the pests grow stronger, the bottle on the shelf says the same thing it said 10 years ago, but the bugs read it differently. Boric acid does not have this problem, and the reason is biological, not chemical. It is a naturally occurring mineral mined from dry lake beds in California, Turkey, and Tibet. Insects cannot evolve around minerals the way they evolved around designed organic molecules. There is nothing for natural selection to grip onto. Cox, in a 2004 review for the Journal of Pesticide Reform, surveyed nearly a century of boric acid use across agricultural and household pest control, and found no documented case of confirmed resistance in any insect species. Boric acid is also remarkably cheap. The reason it is not advertised on television, the reason there is no slick national campaign behind it, is the simplest economics in the world. Nothing this inexpensive can support a marketing budget. A $2 jar will never pay for a billboard, but effectiveness and price are only half the story. The other half is that boric acid solves a problem most gardeners do not even know they have. The problem is not the aphids on the leaves. The problem is whoever is feeding them. When aphids show up on roses, peppers, kale, or cucumbers, the instinct is to grab a spray bottle. Soap, neem, pyrethrin, whatever is in the shed. The aphids die. 3 days later, they are back in greater numbers. The cycle repeats every week. By the middle of August, most gardeners simply give up and accept the damage. Here is what the spray bottle missed. Aphids on a thriving garden plant are almost never alone. Above them, around them, and on the soil at the base of the stem, an ant colony is running a livestock operation. The ants protect the aphids from ladybugs, lacewings, and parasitic wasps that would otherwise eat them. They carry aphids physically to fresh young leaves where the sap is richest. Some ant species even bite the wings off winged aphids so the herd cannot fly away to a different garden. In exchange, the aphids secrete a sugar-rich fluid called honeydew, which the ants collect and bring home to feed the colony. Entomologists have a clean term for this arrangement: trophobiosis, or mutual feeding. The ant gets calories, the aphid gets protection from every natural predator that would normally keep its population in check. Scraping aphids off leaves at sunrise is fighting only the cattle, not the ranchers. This is not a fringe theory. It is documented in standard entomology textbooks and confirmed in the field. A study by Venn Shore and colleagues, published in 2014 and indexed at the National Library of Medicine, examined 3 pest ant species in South African vineyards and their relationship with the vine mealybug. When the researchers physically blocked ant access to the vines using sticky barriers around the trunk, mealybug populations collapsed within weeks. No pesticide was applied. The natural predators were always there. They simply could not get past the security guards. This is why every spray bottle ultimately fails. Killing aphids without removing the ants is killing customers without removing the rancher. Within days, the rancher walks new aphids in from a neighboring plant or breeds replacements from eggs the spray never reached. The economy reboots. The gardener has to break the rancher, and the rancher lives underground in a colony of 10,000 or more, with a queen the gardener will never see and never reach with any spray ever invented. This is exactly the problem that boric acid was made to solve. Boric acid breaks the rancher with a slow, almost surgical mechanism. When a worker ant feeds on a sugar water solution containing 1 to 2% boric acid, three things happen in order. First, the ant does not die immediately. This is the most important part of the entire system, and it is also the part most home recipes get wrong by using too much powder. The boric acid moves through the ant's gut without causing fast paralysis. The worker keeps walking, keeps foraging, keeps carrying. To the gardener watching, the ant looks completely normal. Second, that worker returns to the nest with the bait still in its crop, the small pouch that ants use to carry liquid food. Ants share food through a process called trophallaxis, mouth-to-mouth feeding, passing the liquid to nestmates, to larvae, and ultimately to the queen. A single worker ant can feed dozens of colony members from one trip to the bait station. Third, the boric acid does its work from the inside. It abrades the gut lining and disrupts the digestive enzymes the insect needs to absorb nutrients. The ant essentially starves at a cellular level, regardless of how much it eats afterward. Death follows in 24 to 72 hours. By that point, the dose has been distributed across a large fraction of the colony, including the queen, who never leaves the nest and never touches the bait directly. There is also a secondary mechanism. When boric acid powder contacts an insect's exoskeleton in dry form, the fine crystals scratch the waxy outer cuticle that holds in moisture. The insect dehydrates from the outside in, even as it is being poisoned from the inside out. Bedbugs, which have unusually thick cuticles, are partially resistant to this contact route, according to research published in the Journal of Economic Entomology in 2018. They still die when they ingest boric acid, but they do not die from walking through it. Soft-bodied garden pests like aphids, earwigs, slugs, and squash bug nymphs have no such defense. The dry powder works on them through both routes at once. 2 routes, 1 mineral. This is why nearly a century of constant use has not produced a confirmed resistant strain in any agricultural pest species. Compare that to glyphosate, where weed resistance was documented within 20 years of widespread adoption, or to pyrethroids, where mosquito and cockroach resistance now exceeds 50 times the original effective dose in many regions. The weapon is in the gardener's hands. The next question is delivery, because a powerful mineral applied carelessly can damage the very soil it is meant to protect. And that mistake is the one most home gardeners make in the first week. The single most effective garden application of boric acid is a liquid sugar water bait delivered on cotton balls inside a sheltered station. The recipe is simple, but the ratios matter, and most online versions get them wrong in ways that quietly cause the bait to fail. Start with 1 cup of warm water, dissolve 3 TBS of plain white sugar into it, stirring until the water runs completely clear. Then add 1 level teaspoon of technical grade boric acid powder, the kind sold for ant and roach control at hardware stores. Not the laundry aisle borax. Borax is a different compound, sodium tetraborate, and it carries different sodium content that some ant species reject outright. For garden use, technical boric acid is the right tool. This mixture lands at roughly 2% boric acid by weight. That ratio is intentional and important. Lower concentrations may not deliver a lethal dose to the colony when distributed across thousands of nestmates. Higher concentrations kill the worker ant too quickly before it can carry the bait home, which leaves the queen alive and the colony fully intact within 2 weeks. Many home recipes call for tablespoons of boric acid instead of teaspoons, and that single error is why so many gardeners report bait stations that did nothing. The ants died too fast. The queen never got fed. Soak 3 or 4 cotton balls in the solution and place them in shallow plastic lids. Old yogurt lids, cottage cheese lids, or jar tops all work perfectly. Position each station near an active ant trail, then cover it with an upturned flower pot, a flat stone, or a small piece of scrap wood. The shelter does 3 jobs at once. It keeps rain from diluting the bait. It keeps direct sun from drying out the cotton. And it keeps pollinators, pets, and curious children well away from the boric acid. For the first 2 or 3 days after placement, ant traffic at the stations will surge dramatically. To the gardener watching, this can look like the bait is failing. There are more ants than ever swarming the cotton balls, climbing in and out in long, disciplined lines. The opposite is happening. Each ant arriving at the station is a courier, picking up the dose and walking it home. The peak traffic is the peak of colony delivery. This is when the bait is doing its most important work. Day 5 through 7, the trail thins noticeably. By day 9, in most cases, the trail is gone entirely. The queen has stopped producing brood. Without the workers shuttling honeydew home, the aphid herd up on the leaves has lost its protectors. Within the same week, ladybug larvae and lacewing nymphs, which were always present in any healthy garden, just outnumbered by ant guards, find the unguarded aphids and clear them in days. One bait station, 1 teaspoon of $2 powder, 1 9-day cycle. The economy collapses without a single drop of synthetic pesticide on a single leaf. Plain white sugar works in a boric acid bait, but it is far from the most attractive carrier. And field research published in 2024 by Bhattacharya and colleagues has put real numbers on exactly how much difference the sweetener choice makes. In their study, the team tested 4 sugar-based carriers paired with boric acid against red ants: refined white sugar, sucrose solution, blackstrap molasses, and raw honey. The same boric acid concentration in each, the same station design. They counted how many ants each station drew over a fixed observation period. White sugar drew an average of about 7 ants per cycle. Sucrose solution drew 5. Blackstrap molasses drew 18. Raw honey drew 25. Honey outperformed plain sugar by roughly 3.5 times. Molasses outperformed plain sugar by about 2.5 times. Both did this for a simple biological reason. Worker ants are tuned by evolution to detect calorie density and trace minerals, not just sweetness. Refined white cane sugar is almost pure sucrose, stripped of everything else during industrial processing. Raw honey contains amino acids, B vitamins, and trace minerals that signal high-value food to a foraging ant scout. Blackstrap molasses, the dark, mineral-rich syrup left over after sugar refining, is loaded with iron, calcium, magnesium, and complex carbohydrates that ants register as a richer, more concentrated food source than anything they would normally find on a wild forage. For the home gardener, the practical upgrade is straightforward. Start with the standard recipe: 1 cup of warm water, 3 TBSP of sugar, 1 TSP of boric acid. Then stir in 1 TBSP of raw honey or 1 TBSP of blackstrap molasses. The bait stays liquid. The boric acid concentration barely shifts, but the bait now smells to a foraging ant like the difference between gas station coffee and fresh-baked pastry. A note of caution for gardens near apiaries. Raw honey can attract worker bees if any open station is within their normal foraging range, typically within 100 yards of a hive. If a beehive is anywhere close, molasses is the safer pick. It is much less attractive to bees, and the dark color signals not flower nectar to most pollinators. Either way, the cotton ball should sit under shelter, not exposed to flying insects. The upgrade typically pulls the colony collapse window from 9 days down closer to 6. The mechanism is identical. The bait just gets carried home faster and in larger volumes per trip. Liquid bait works for ants, but soft-bodied pests that crawl across the soil at night, earwigs, slugs, cutworms, squash bug nymphs, sow bugs, need a different delivery system entirely. The answer is a thin, dry line of boric acid powder along the perimeter of the bed, never worked into the soil itself. This is the single rule that protects the garden from boron toxicity, and it is non-negotiable. Boron is an essential plant micronutrient. Tomatoes, brassicas, melons, beans, and most fruiting vegetables all require trace amounts of boron in the soil to set fruit and develop healthy cell walls. But the line between essential and toxic is unusually narrow for boron compared to most other nutrients. Concentrated boric acid tilled into a vegetable bed can shift soil boron from beneficial parts per million levels into the toxic range, where it yellows leaves, stunts roots, and reduces yield for 2 or sometimes 3 full growing seasons. A single careless dusting can compromise a bed for years. The fix is precision. Boric acid stays on the surface. It stays in narrow lines. It stays in places the gardener controls. For soft-bodied crawlers, run a dry line of powder about 1/8 of an inch wide along the outer wooden frame of a raised bed, or in a thin border just beyond the drip line of a single in-ground plant. Not against the stem, not across the root zone. The powder picks up on the legs and underside of crawling insects as they cross the line, and the dual mechanism, abrasion plus ingestion during grooming, does the rest. For squash bugs at the base of a vine, dust no more than a quarter teaspoon directly onto the soil within 4 inches of the stem and keep the application well away from the leaves and the open flowers where bees forage. Reapply only after rain washes the line away. 2 or 3 applications across a season is plenty for an entire raised bed. For slugs around hostas, lettuce beds, or seedling brassicas, lay a continuous thin dry line around the bed perimeter at sundown when slugs become active. The line acts as a physical and chemical barrier. Slugs that try to cross pick up the powder on their muscular foot, and the abrasive crystals work fast on their moisture-dependent skin. There is one more rule, and it matters most in late summer when pollinators are everywhere. Never apply boric acid powder when the plant is in bloom and bees are actively foraging. The risk of contact toxicity to honeybees is low. The EPA classifies boric acid as practically non-toxic to honeybees based on standard LD50 testing. But low risk is not zero risk. The simple discipline is to apply early morning before bees are out or in the evening after they have returned to the hive, and to keep the powder out of the flower zone entirely. These 3 habits, liquid bait for the ants, dry perimeter line for the crawlers, hands off the soil and the flowers, are the entire boric acid playbook for a backyard garden. $2 of powder, 1 cup of water, a handful of cotton balls, and the willingness to wait 9 days for the colony to fall instead of grabbing a spray bottle that will not solve the actual problem anyway. For nearly 100 years, this mineral has quietly done what no patented synthetic chemical has managed, working without breeding stronger pests, without stripping the soil microbiome, and without poisoning the predators that do most of the gardening when the gardener simply stays out of their way. The reason it never became a household name is the same reason most of the best old solutions never do. Nothing this cheap can support a marketing budget. The garden does not need stronger weapons. It needs a clearer view of who is actually running the operation under the leaves. If aphids have been winning in the garden this season, look at the soil at the base of the stem before reaching for another spray. There is probably a trail of ants, a livestock economy in full swing, and 1 TSP of $2 powder waiting to bring the whole arrangement down quietly, slowly, on the timeline that nature itself prefers. What pest has given you trouble in the garden this year? Have ants been spotted around an aphid outbreak before? Share your story below, because the best gardening wisdom has always traveled gardener to gardener, across fence lines and across generations. Keep your hands in the soil, keep watching what is really going on under the leaves, and keep growing. If this story changed the way you look at the hidden economies in your garden, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the natural history and simple solutions that have been overlooked for far too long. Let's grow a better future together. The next treasure of gardening wisdom will be open soon.